The Harvest Moon's communications array hummed with power as Ellen composed their emergency transmission to Drydus High Command. Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, translating horror into clinical military terminology. Priority Alpha. Biological weapon deployment confirmed on Barnett. Estimated 400 million infected. Pathogen appears to be engineered hybrid. Viral/bacterial/fungal components. Transmission via blood-borne contact. Recommend immediate system-wide quarantine and the transmission indicator flashed red. Ellen frowned, checking the systems. That's weird. What's weird? Schmidt asked, appearing in the doorway with a ration pack in hand. He'd removed his helmet but kept the rest of his armor on. None of them were taking chances anymore. The transmission won't go through. I'm getting full power to the array, proper encoding, correct frequencies, but it's like hitting a wall. She pulled up the diagnostic display. We're being jammed. Actively jammed by something with serious power. Schmidt set down his ration pack, his face hardening. Show me. Ellen brought up a visualization of the electromagnetic spectrum around them. It looked like a storm, waves of interference radiating from multiple points across LaRouque, creating an impenetrable blanket of noise that drowned out any attempt at long-range communication. Someone set up a planetary communications lockdown, Schmidt said, understanding dawning with sickening clarity. That's why we weren't getting any signals except automated beacons. Everything else is being suppressed. But who would? Ellen stopped, her eyes widening. Oh no. Yeah. Schmidt's jaw tightened. Whoever created this thing wanted to make sure it couldn't be reported. At least not quickly. By the time anyone realizes Barnett went silent and sends a fleet to investigate. The infection spreads across the entire planet, Ellen finished. 400 million people. All infected. And no one in the rest of the Confederation knows what's waiting here. Schmidt activated the team-wide comm, everyone to the bridge. Now, the bridge of the Harvest Moon felt claustrophobic with all 5 team members crowded into the space designed for 3. Jake was still covered in grease from working on the thruster components, while Gabriel hadn't bothered to remove any of his weapons. Benedict looked like he'd been trying to sleep, unsuccessfully, given the dark circles under his eyes. We have a problem, Schmidt announced without preamble. He gestured to Ellen, who pulled up the jamming visualization on the main display. Planetary communications lockdown, she explained. Multiple high-powered jammers creating overlapping fields that block any transmission beyond low orbit. We can talk to each other, we can pick up local automated signals, but we can't send anything to Drydus High Command. So they don't know what happened here, Benedict said quietly. They're still planning to send those 3 capital ships and 3 full legions into a hot zone. It gets worse, Jake added, pulling up a schematic of the Harvest Moon's damage systems. I've been analyzing the thruster damage. The actuators are external components. They're mounted on the hull. I can replace them, I can calibrate them, I can get us flight-worthy. But I can't do it from inside the ship. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Meaning someone has to go outside and physically install the new components. In a city full of infected, with limited defensive positions and no way to quickly retreat if things go sideways. Jake's expression was grim. It's going to take at least 4 hours of external work. Maybe 6 if we run into complications. We always run into complications, Benedict muttered. Schmidt studied the schematics, his tactical mind already working the problem. Can we move the ship? Get to a more defensible position before we start the repairs. Negative, Jake said. The damage is such that if we try to fly, even just hovering, we risk catastrophic failure. The vectoring mechanisms are barely holding together as it is. One wrong move and we'll crash, probably rupturing fuel lines in the process. And there's one more thing, Ellen added, pulling up a sensor display. The tractor beam that dragged us down here? It's still active. I'm reading the emitter array approximately 8 kilometers northeast of our position. Looks like it's part of the spaceport's central control tower. As long as that system is online, even if we get the thrusters fixed, we're not going anywhere. It'll just grab us and pull us back down. The bridge fell silent as the team absorbed the full scope of their situation. Trapped on a planet full of infected. Unable to call for help. Unable to leave even if they repaired their ship. And time was running out. Not just for them, but for the thousands of Drydus soldiers currently en route to a nightmare they couldn't even imagine. So we need to destroy the tractor beam emitter and take down the communications jammers, Schmidt said, his voice calm despite the impossibility of the task, while also making external repairs to our ship in a hostile environment. Is that about right? That's about right, Jake confirmed. Gabriel laughed, a sound with an edge of hysteria to it. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds easy. Nothing about this is easy, Schmidt said. He pulled up a tactical map of Larouk, highlighting the spaceport and the surrounding city. But we're timber wolves. We've done impossible before. We'll do it again. He pointed to the display. Jake, how many people do you need for the external repairs? 2 minimum. 1 to install components, 1 to run diagnostics and hand off tools. 3 would be better. You'll have 2. Ellen, you're with Jake on the repairs. You've got the medical training to handle any injuries if something goes wrong. Plus, you're our best shot after Gabriel for covering fire if needed. Ellen nodded, already running through equipment lists in her head. Benedict, Gabriel, you're with me. Schmidt continued. We're going after the tractor beam emitter and the jammers. We take them out. Then we get back here and help with the repairs if needed. 8 kilometers through infested urban terrain, Benedict observed. On foot, that's at least 2 hours one way. Probably longer if we run into concentrated resistance. Which means we need to move fast and hit hard, Gabriel said, his hand unconsciously checking one of his knives. In and out before they can swarm us. Exactly. Schmidt zoomed in on the control tower. The tractor beam emitter is our priority target. According to the facility schematics, it's a standalone system on the tower's roof, military-grade equipment designed to capture unauthorized vessels. If we can plant charges and blow it, that solves half our problem. And the jammers? Ellen asked. According to the sensor data, there are 5 primary jamming stations spread across the city, Schmidt said, highlighting them on the map. We don't need to destroy all of them, just enough to create a gap in the coverage that we can transmit through. If we can take out 2 or 3, that should give us a window. Jake studied the map, his engineer's mind calculating distances and timing. The nearest jammer is only 3 kilometers from the control tower. If you hit the tractor beam first, you could swing by and take out that jammer on your way back. That's the plan, Schmidt confirmed. We destroy the tractor beam, destroy 1 jammer to create a transmission window, then haul ass back here. Ellen sends the warning to Drydus. Jake gets the thrusters fixed, and we get off this rock before the entire infected population of Larouk decides to throw us a going-away party. Simple, Gabriel said with dark humor. What could possibly go wrong? Benedict was frowning at something on his datapad. Boss, I've been thinking about Senator Marcellus's transmission. The one that got through 3 days ago. What about it? Schmidt asked. It was vague. She mentioned a crisis and asked for Drydus' assistance, but she didn't specify what kind of crisis. No mention of a biological weapon, no mention of infected, no body count. Just send help. Benedict looked up. That doesn't track with what we're seeing. If she knew about the infection, why wouldn't she say so? Ellen pulled up the transmission transcript. He's right. The message reads, "This is Senator Livia Marcellus. Barnett is experiencing a significant crisis. We request immediate Drydus assistance. The situation is difficult. Please send aid." In transmission. Then it cut off. Difficult, Gabriel repeated. That's one hell of an understatement for a zombie apocalypse. Either she didn't know what was happening, Jake said slowly, or she was being forced to downplay it. Schmidt felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Or the infection progressed so fast that between sending that message and now, the entire planet fell. 3 days. That's all it would take if the pathogen spreads as efficiently as Ellen thinks it does. There's another possibility, Benedict said quietly. What if someone wanted to make sure no real help arrived? You send a vague distress call, Drydus dispatches a small reconnaissance team instead of a full military response. By the time anyone realizes how bad it really is, the infection has spread too far to contain, Schmidt finished. And whoever did this gets exactly what they wanted, a dead planet and no witnesses to explain what happened. The team fell silent, each person processing the implications. We need to find out what happened to Marcellus, Ellen said. If she's still alive, she might have answers. If she's still alive, she's either infected or hiding, Schmidt replied. And given what we've seen, he didn't need to finish the sentence. One problem at a time, Jake said. First we get off this planet. Then we can worry about finding survivors. Schmidt nodded. Agreed. We stick to the plan. Tractor beam, jammer, repairs, escape. Everything else is secondary. The armory of the Harvest Moon had been designed to support a crew of 20. For 5 people, it was ridiculously over-equipped, which, given the current situation, seemed like foresight rather than paranoia. Schmidt checked his primary rifle one more time, then added extra drum magazines to his load-bearing vest. 200 rounds per drum, 6 drums total. 1,200 rounds of .45 caliber ammunition. It seemed like a lot until you remembered that headshots didn't work and you needed to basically dismantle each infected to stop it. His sidearm got a similar treatment. 4 extra magazines for his 1911, plus a backup pistol maglock to his thigh plate. Grenades, both fragmentation and incendiary, went into dedicated pouches. A combat knife the size of his forearm hung from his belt. Gabriel, predictably, looked like he was preparing for a one-man war. His plasma rifle was joined by a backup plasma pistol, his heavy machine gun, enough knives to stock a cutlery store, and 4 of his beloved 1911s distributed across his armor. He also grabbed a portable plasma cutter, ostensibly for breaching doors, but Schmidt suspected Gabriel just liked having more ways to burn things. Benedict took a more measured approach, selecting his equipment with the same careful deliberation he brought to everything. Standard rifle, backup weapon, demolition charges for the tractor beam and jammer, and enough medical supplies to keep them alive if things got messy. He also grabbed a portable jammer detector, a bulky piece of equipment, but it would help them locate their target faster. "You're sure about this?" Benedict asked Schmidt as they geared up. "We could try to repair the ship first, then deal with the tractor beam and jammers. And if we get the ship fixed but can't take off or call for help, we've just wasted time and resources," Schmidt replied. "No, we do this the hard way. We clear the obstacles, then we execute the escape." Jake appeared in the armory doorway, already wearing his own equipment. "I've programmed the ship's point defense systems to autonomous mode. Anyone, or anything, that gets within 50 meters and doesn't have our IFF transponders is going to have a very bad day. That should keep you and Ellen safe while you're working," Schmidt said. "How are you going to handle the external repairs?" "Magnetic grapples and safety lines," Jake replied. "Ellen will be inside the access tube, feeding me components while I'm outside installing them. The point defense turrets will cover my position, but I'm still going to be exposed for at least 4 hours. Then we better make sure our trip is quick," Schmidt said. He activated his helmet's external speakers. "Everyone, final systems check. We leave in 10 minutes. The cargo ramp lowered onto a world transformed by fire. The spaceport that had been a charnel house of infected was now a smoking wasteland. The fuel tank explosions had created a kill zone hundreds of meters in diameter, the ground scorched black and littered with charred remains that barely looked human anymore. But beyond the blast radius, the city waited. LaRouche stretched before them, a sprawling metropolis of 32 million that had become a tomb. The afternoon sun painted the buildings in shades of gold and crimson, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Somewhere in that urban maze, millions of infected shuffled through empty streets, driven by whatever corrupted impulse the pathogen had installed in their nervous systems. And somewhere in there, the team had to penetrate 8 kilometers, destroy military-grade equipment, and make it back alive. "Ave Drydus," Schmidt said quietly. "Ave Drydus," the others echoed. They moved out in a tight formation, Schmidt on point, Gabriel and Benedict flanking, weapons up and scanning for threats. Behind them, Ellen and Jake stood at the base of the cargo ramp, watching them go. "Don't do anything stupid," Ellen called out. "No promises," Gabriel called back. The team advanced into the ruins of the spaceport, moving with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who'd fought together for years. Every corner was checked, every shadow investigated, every piece of cover evaluated for tactical advantage. The silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects, no ambient city noise. Just the whisper of wind through empty buildings and the occasional distant moan of the infected. They'd covered maybe 300 meters when Benedict's helmet sensors picked up movement. "Contact, 10 o'clock, second floor of that warehouse," he reported calmly. Schmidt's HUD highlighted the target, a figure visible through a shattered window, moving with that characteristic jerky, uncoordinated gait. It was holding something. Schmidt zoomed his optics. A rifle. The infected soldier, it had been wearing Barnett Planetary Defense Force armor, raised the weapon with spastic, uncoordinated movements. Its rotted fingers fumbled with the trigger mechanism, the barrel wavering wildly, as corrupted motor control fought against the weapon's weight. The shot went wide by at least 3 meters, the round sparking off Duracrete 50 feet from Schmidt's position. "Soldier class infected," Schmidt warned. "It's armed, but its aim is shit. Still, watch yourselves." "Gabriel, I see it." Gabriel's plasma rifle hummed as it charged. Taking the shot, the bolt caught the infected center mass, burning through its torso and severing its spine. The creature collapsed, the rifle clattering from its hands as its body ceased to function. But even as it fell, Schmidt could see its head still moving, jaw still working, trying to complete whatever corrupted objective its infection-riddled nervous system still retained. "Keep moving," Schmidt ordered. "Fast and quiet. We don't want to attract more attention than necessary." They pressed deeper into the city, using the main arterial roads where possible and cutting through buildings when the streets became too congested with abandoned vehicles. The cars were everywhere, thousands of them, doors open, engines long since dead, their owners having fled on foot when the infection began. Some of the vehicles still had bodies in them. Schmidt tried not to look too closely. They were 2 kilometers from the spaceport when they encountered the first major concentration of infected. A plaza, maybe 100 meters across, that had probably been a gathering place in better times. Now it was packed with hundreds of the things, shambling in slow circles like a grotesque parody of a crowd. Some wore business attire, others wore the remnants of military uniforms. A few had been children. Schmidt felt his stomach clench. Among the shambling mass, he could see a handful of infected clutching weapons, rifles, pistols, even what looked like a machete. They moved with the same uncoordinated jerks as the others, occasionally raising their weapons and firing random shots that went nowhere near any target. One infected soldier fired its rifle into the air 3 times before the weapon clicked empty. It stared at the rifle for a long moment, then began trying to reload, its rotted fingers dropping the magazine repeatedly, unable to complete the complex motor task. "They can't reload," Benedict observed quietly. "Motor control's too degraded. They can pull a trigger if there's already a round chambered, but anything more complex is beyond them," Schmidt finished. "Still, a lucky shot is still a shot. Stay in cover and move carefully. We go around," he said quietly. "No engagement unless necessary." They skirted the plaza, using side streets and building interiors to avoid the horde. It took an extra 20 minutes, but it was better than trying to fight through hundreds of infected with limited ammunition. The control tower loomed larger as they advanced, a monolithic structure that reached toward the sky like an accusing finger. According to the schematics, it was 40 stories tall, with the tractor beam emitter mounted on a reinforced platform on the roof, which meant they had to climb. "There," Benedict said, pointing to a service entrance on the tower's northern face. "Maintenance access. Should take us straight up via the internal stairwells." They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The entrance was sealed, but the access codes Jake had downloaded before they'd left the ship still worked. The door hissed open, revealing a dark stairwell that climbed up into shadows. "Of course it's dark," Gabriel muttered. "Why wouldn't it be dark?" Schmidt activated his helmet's lighting system, the beam cutting through the gloom. "Standard room clearing procedures. I'm on point. Gabriel, your rear security. Benedict, middle position. We go slow, we check every floor, and we don't get sloppy." The climb began. 40 floors. 800 steps, give or take. In full combat armor, carrying enough ammunition to fight a small war. Schmidt's augmented muscles handled the load without complaint, but the psychological weight of ascending through a dead building in a dead city pressed down with every step. They passed the 10th floor without incident. The 20th. The 30th. On the 35th floor, they found the first body. It had been a security officer once, you could tell by the uniform, but something had killed it with extreme prejudice. The body was torn apart, limbs scattered, the torso opened like a grotesque flower. And the walls. The walls were covered in claw marks. "Something did this recently," Benedict observed, his voice tight. "The blood is still tacky." "Infected don't do this to each other," Schmidt said, studying the carnage. "They cooperate in their own twisted way. This is something else." "You think there are other things down here?" Gabriel asked. "Besides the infected?" "I think we don't know what we're dealing with," Schmidt replied. "Stay alert. Whatever did this might still be around." They continued climbing, weapons at the ready, every nerve on edge. The 36th floor. The 37th. The 38th. On the 39th floor, they heard it. A sound like metal scraping on metal, echoing down from above. Then a low, rumbling growl that definitely didn't come from any human throat, or even a single human throat. "Contact above," Benedict warned. Unknown nature. They advanced up the final flight of stairs to the roof access, moving with exaggerated caution. The door to the roof was hanging open, twisted on its hinges as if something very strong had forced it. Beyond, afternoon sunlight streamed in. Schmidt moved to the doorway, his rifle leading the way. He cleared the corners, checked the immediate area, then stepped out onto the roof. The tractor beam emitter dominated the space, a massive piece of equipment the size of a small building, bristling with focusing arrays and power conduits. It hummed with active energy, ready to snatch any vessel that tried to escape Larouk's embrace. And standing between them and the emitter was something out of a nightmare. It had been people once. Multiple people, actually. The infection had fused them together into a single grotesque mass. Limbs protruding at wrong angles, multiple heads lolling on elongated necks, torsos merged into a singular, pulsing body that stood nearly 3 meters tall. Fungal growth covered it like armor, thick and rope-like, binding the component bodies together in ways that defied anatomy. Its many eyes, at least 7 that Schmidt could count, gleamed with that familiar black-threaded malevolence. Some of the fused bodies still wore remnants of clothing. Schmidt could make out parts of a business suit, a military uniform, what might have been a medical coat. Each component seemed to move semi-independently, creating a horrifying display of uncoordinated cooperation. What in the name of, Gabriel started. The thing roared, a sound that came from at least 3 throats simultaneously, creating a discordant howl that echoed across the rooftop. Then it charged. For something so massive and malformed, it moved with terrifying speed. Multiple legs, some human, some grotesquely elongated, propelled it forward with lurching bounds. Arms reached out, too many arms, each one grasping. Spread out, Schmidt shouted, diving to the left as the thing's charge carried it past his position. Hit the legs. Bring it down. The team's weapons opened up in a coordinated barrage. Schmidt's rifle thundered, heavy rounds punching into the fused mass of limbs and torsos. Black ichor sprayed with each impact, but the thing barely slowed. Gabriel's plasma rifle shrieked, superheated bolts burning through fungal growth and flesh. One of the creature's arms simply vaporized, the stump cauterized instantly. But even as it fell away, the thing kept coming, using its remaining limbs to scuttle across the rooftop like some massive, malformed spider. Benedict's demolition charges came out. Give me 30 seconds and I can blow this thing to pieces. You don't have 30 seconds. Gabriel shouted, backpedaling as the creature changed direction, its multiple heads tracking him with predatory focus. Schmidt saw the danger. The thing was smart enough, or its component parts retained enough corrupted intelligence, to recognize threats. It was focusing on Gabriel, the one whose plasma rifle had hurt it most. Over here, Schmidt roared, putting a sustained burst into the creature's central mass. Come on, you ugly bastard. 3 of the heads swiveled toward him. The thing changed direction with horrifying speed, multiple legs propelling it in a charging launch. Schmidt rolled to the side, the creature's mass crashing into the rooftop where he'd been standing. The duracrete cracked under the impact. Benedict was moving, circling around to the thing's blind side. His hands worked with practiced efficiency, priming demolition charges and looking for structural weak points in the fused mass. The creature's many arms lashed out, one catching Schmidt's rifle and tearing it from his hands with strength that bent the maglock mount on his armor. The weapon clattered away across the roof, leaving Schmidt with only his sidearm. He drew his 1911 and put 6 rounds into the nearest head, the skull exploding in a spray of bone and ichor. But the body it was attached to kept moving, the other heads compensating for the loss. This isn't working. Gabriel called out, his plasma rifle cycling between shots to prevent overheating. We need to take out its mobility. Schmidt saw it then, the legs. Multiple human legs fused together, the bones visible through torn flesh, held together by ropey strands of fungal growth. That was the weak point. Legs, he shouted. Concentrate fire on the legs. The team adjusted their aim, rounds and plasma bolts tearing into the creature's lower body. Bones shattered, flesh tore, fungal growth burned away. The thing's movements became more erratic, more unstable. With a sound like tearing canvas, one of the primary support legs gave way. The creature stumbled, its massive bulk tilting sideways. Now, Benedict shouted, sprinting forward. He slapped demolition charges onto the creature's exposed central mass, then dove away. Fire in the hole. The explosion was enormous in the confined space of the rooftop. The creature's fused body came apart in a spray of component parts and black ichor, pieces raining down across the duracrete in wet, meaty thumps. For a long moment, the team stood there, weapons trained on the scattered remains, waiting for any sign of movement. Slowly, the pieces stopped twitching. Everyone intact? Schmidt asked, his voice hoarse. Intact, Benedict confirmed, checking himself for injuries. What the hell was that thing? Evolution, Gabriel said darkly. The infection's getting creative, fusing multiple hosts together to create something bigger, stronger. Which means the longer this outbreak continues, the worse it's going to get, Schmidt said. He retrieved his rifle, checking it for damage. The weapon had a new dent in the receiver, but it still functioned. We need to get off this planet before we run into anything worse than that. He moved to the tractor beam emitter, studying its construction. The device was massive, built to withstand everything from storms to direct weapons fire. Taking it down wasn't going to be simple. Benedict, how much demolition charge do we have left? Benedict checked his pack. After that thing, maybe enough for one good blast. But I'll need to place them at structural weak points for maximum effect. Do it. Gabriel, perimeter security. Make sure nothing else decides to join the party. While Benedict worked, Schmidt moved to the roof's edge and looked out over Larouk. From 40 stories up, he could see the true scope of the devastation. Fires burned in dozens of locations across the city. The streets were clogged with abandoned vehicles. And everywhere, shambling figures moved through the ruins. Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, all infected, all hunting. In the distance, near what the map indicated was the government district, he could see a fortified building. Walls reinforced with debris, windows barricaded. The flag of Barnett still flew from its roof. Benedict, Schmidt called out. You seeing that? Benedict moved to the edge, following Schmidt's pointing finger. Government building. Provincial Administrative Center, according to the map. Pro-Barnett government forces must have made a stand there. No lights, Schmidt observed. No movement. No signs of life. Could be maintaining radio silence and light discipline, Benedict suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. Or they're all dead, Gabriel added, joining them. Or worse. Schmidt studied the building through his rifle's scope. The fortifications looked hastily constructed but effective. Someone had known what they were doing. But the building was silent, dark, lifeless. And given that Senator Marcellus and the actual Barnett government had been in New Dunkirk, the capital city, 300 kilometers to the east, this was just a secondary holdout. Loyalists, maybe. Administrators who tried to maintain order as the world fell apart around them. We're in Larouk, not New Dunkirk, Schmidt said, more to himself than the others. That tractor beam pulled us to the wrong city. The senator's not even on this continent. If she's even still alive, Benedict said quietly. 3 months is a long time. We'll worry about it after we get the tractor beam down, Schmidt decided. One problem at a time. Charge is set, Benedict reported. We need to get to the stairwell. This is going to be a big one. They retreated to the relative safety of the stairwell, sealing the door behind them. Benedict checked his detonator, made sure the charges were armed. 5 seconds, he counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1. The explosion shook the entire tower. Through the small window in the stairwell door, they could see the tractor beam emitter come apart in a brilliant flash of light and debris. The massive focusing arrays toppled, the power conduits ruptured, and the whole assembly collapsed in on itself with a groan of tortured metal. That should do it, Benedict said with satisfaction. Schmidt keyed his comm. Ellen, you reading this? Confirmed. Ellen's voice came back immediately. Tractor beam is offline. Sensors show total system failure. Good work. 1 down, 1 to go, Schmidt said. We're heading for the nearest jammer now. ETA 40 minutes. Be careful, Ellen replied. Jake's about to start external repairs. We're going to be vulnerable. Copy that. Schmidt out. The team descended the tower's stairwell at a quick pace, their boots echoing in the confined space. They'd accomplished the first objective, but Schmidt couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead. They emerged from the tower into the afternoon heat, the city stretching before them like a graveyard. According to Benedict's jammer detector, the nearest jamming station was 3 kilometers southwest, a communications relay station on top of a commercial high-rise. Standard movement protocol, Schmidt ordered. Stay in cover, avoid large concentrations of infected, and move fast. They set off through the ruins of Larouk, 3 soldiers against a dead city. Behind them, the shattered remains of the tractor beam emitter smoldered, sending smoke into the afternoon sky like a funeral pyre. The commercial district of Larouk had been a thriving center of business and trade before the outbreak. Now it was a maze of shattered glass and abandoned offices, the detritus of civilization scattered across streets that should have been packed with people. The team moved through the area with practiced caution, using vehicles and building corners for cover as they advanced toward the communications relay station. Benedict's jammer detector led them unerringly toward their target, the signal growing stronger with each block. They'd covered maybe 2 kilometers when Gabriel spotted movement that made him freeze. Movement, 3 o'clock, ground level, he reported. Multiple contacts, moving together. They're organized. Schmidt checked his HUD, which highlighted a group of 15 infected moving in a rough formation down the street. They weren't shambling randomly. They were patrolling, moving with purpose despite their uncoordinated gaits. They're learning, Benedict said quietly, or the infection is getting better at coordinating them. Either way, we avoid them if possible, Schmidt decided. We're not here to fight every infected in the city. They detoured through a parking garage, the dim interior lit only by their helmet lights. The structure was filled with abandoned vehicles, their doors hanging open, personal effects scattered on the ground where people had fled. They were halfway through when they heard it. Moaning, but different from what they'd encountered before. Rhythmic. Almost musical. What the hell is that? Gabriel muttered. They rounded a corner and found the source. 20 infected stood in a rough circle, swaying in unison, their moans rising and falling in a grotesque harmony. In the center of the circle lay a body, fresh, recently killed, the wounds still bleeding. As the team watched, 2 of the infected knelt beside the body, their movements almost ritualistic. There, what are they doing? Benedict asked, his voice tight with revulsion. Schmidt felt his skin crawl. I don't know, and I don't want to find out. Back the way we came. Slow and quiet. They retreated carefully, not daring to engage the bizarre scene. Whatever the infection was doing to its hosts, it was evolving beyond simple predatory behavior into something more complex, more disturbing. They found an alternate route through a series of connected buildings, finally emerging 6 blocks from the communications relay station. The building was a 30-story tower of glass and steel, its top bristling with transmission equipment, and surrounding it were hundreds of infected. Well, that's just great, Gabriel observed. They're guarding it. Not guarding, Benedict said, studying the movement patterns. They're drawn to it. Look, they're facing the tower, moving toward it. The jamming signal must attract them somehow. Schmidt pulled up the building's schematics on his HUD. Service entrance on the north side should take us to the maintenance elevators. We go up, plant charges on the jamming equipment, get out. Fast and quiet. Nothing about this is going to be quiet, Gabriel pointed out. Then we make it fast, Schmidt replied. But before they could move, Benedict grabbed Schmidt's arm. Wait, look at that building, 2 blocks north. Schmidt followed his gaze. There, partially obscured by smoke and haze, was the fortified government building they'd seen from the tower roof. And now, at street level, they could see more details. The Barnett flag still flew, but below it hung another flag, red, with a yellow sickle and hammer. That's not a Barnett government flag, Gabriel said quietly. No, Schmidt agreed, his instincts screaming. That's a communist rebel flag. Old Earth iconography. The rebels who supposedly overthrew Barnett's government, Benedict said, his voice tight. The ones we thought started the uprising. Schmidt studied the building through his scope. The fortifications were even more elaborate than he'd first thought. Professional military work, designed to withstand a siege. And around the perimeter, he could see infected shambling and patrol patterns. That's not a government holdout, Schmidt said slowly. That's a rebel stronghold. Or it was. Should we investigate? Gabriel asked. Schmidt weighed the options. They were on a tight timeline. Jake needed them back at the ship in less than 2 hours. But the presence of that flag raised questions. If the rebels had controlled this building, if they'd been the ones to release the virus. We investigate, Schmidt decided. But fast. Benedict, Gabriel, you're with me. We get in, we see what we can find, we get out. 15 minutes, no more. They approached the building cautiously, weapons ready. The infected around the perimeter were the standard shambling variety, easy enough to avoid. The main entrance had been barricaded from the inside, but a side door stood partially open. Schmidt led the way inside, his rifle's light cutting through the darkness. The interior was a scene of hasty fortification. Furniture piled against windows, supply crates scattered across the floor, defensive positions that had been abandoned in haste. Looks like they left in a hurry, Benedict observed. Or they all turned, Gabriel added grimly. They moved deeper into the building, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. The first floor was empty save for debris and the detritus of hurried evacuation. The second floor showed signs of habitation, sleeping areas, a makeshift kitchen, medical supplies. And bodies. Lots of bodies. They'd all been shot, execution style. Single rounds to the head, each one a precise kill. The kind of killing that spoke of military discipline and cold calculation. Someone executed these people, Benedict said, examining one of the bodies. Recently, too, maybe a day or two before we arrived. The infection had already started spreading by then, but these weren't infected. These were deliberate murders. Schmidt moved to what looked like a command center, maps on the walls, communication equipment, and a locked door at the far end of the room. The door was reinforced, designed to withstand considerable force. And hanging from the door handle was a red flag with a yellow sickle and hammer. That door, Schmidt said, his instincts screaming danger. Whatever happened here, the answer's behind that door. Benedict examined the lock. It's sealed from the outside. Whatever's in there, someone wanted to make sure it stayed in there. Can you open it? Schmidt asked. Yeah, but... Benedict hesitated. Boss, if they sealed this for a reason, then we need to know what that reason is, Schmidt finished. Open it. Carefully. Benedict worked on the lock while Schmidt and Gabriel took up defensive positions. The mechanism clicked, and the door swung open with a groan of protesting hinges. The smell hit them first, death and decay, but different from the infected. This was older, more complete. The smell of bodies left to rot in a sealed room. Schmidt activated his helmet light and stepped inside. The room had been a conference area once. Now it was a tomb. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, maybe 20 of them, all in various states of decomposition. But unlike the executed rebels outside, these people wore different clothing. Business suits, government attire, military uniforms bearing Barnett insignia. And in the center of the room, slumped in a chair at the head of the conference table, sat a woman in a senator's robes. Senator Livia Marcellus. Her eyes were open, clouded and black-threaded. Her mouth hung slack in a permanent moan. But she was restrained. Heavy chains bound her to the chair, preventing her from rising. Around her neck hung a sign, hastily scrawled, "Traitors to the People's Revolution." They locked them in here, Benedict said, his voice hollow with horror. The rebels. They locked the Barnett government officials in this room, and... Schmidt saw them then, shattered vials on the floor. Biological containment vessels, their seals broken, their contents long since dispersed into the air. Official markings indicated they'd come from Barnett's bioweapons research facility. They released the virus in here, Gabriel said, completing the thought. Locked them in with the pathogen. A mass execution by biological weapon. Schmidt moved closer to the senator, careful not to get within reach of her chained arms. Her infected eyes tracked his movement, her mouth working soundlessly. On the table in front of her lay a datapad, its screen still active. He picked it up carefully and began to read. It was a log, a record of the final hours of Barnett's government. Day 1. The rebels have seized the administrative building. We're trapped on the 3rd floor. They're demanding we record a message to Drydus, asking for humanitarian assistance only. Senator Marcellus refuses. They shot Minister Kalas to make their point. She's recording the message now. Day 2. They've moved us to the conference room. The rebel leader, calls himself Chairman Volkov, says we're being held for crimes against the people. He's ranting about renewal, about purging the corrupt old order. I think he's insane. Day 3. Volkov brought containers from the research facility. He says they contain the future of humanity. I've seen those containers before, level 5 biohazard markings. He's going to release it in here with us. He says we'll be the first to experience the transformation. God help us. Day 3. Later, the seals are broken. We can smell it. Something chemical, organic. Senator Marcellus is trying to maintain order, but people are panicking. The rebels have sealed the door from outside. We're trapped. Day 3. Evening. People are getting sick. Vomiting, fever, seizures. The senator is trying to help, but there's nothing we can do. We're all going to die in here. Day 3. Final entry. The infection works fast. Half of us have turned already. The senator was bitten trying to help Minister Wells. She knows what's coming. She's asked me to record this final message. The virus was released deliberately by Chairman Volkov and his Renewal Initiative rebel faction. They believe humanity needs to be reforged through biological transformation. The virus was created in Barnett's bioweapons labs as part of a Drydus military contract, gain-of-function research to develop countermeasures. Volkov and his people stole it, weaponized it, and released it to cleanse Barnett of what they called capitalist corruption. They're insane. They're all insane. If anyone finds this, don't let them spread this to other worlds. Burn Barnett. Burn it all. It's the only way to. The entry ended there. The author had likely turned before they could finish. Schmidt felt sick. They did this on purpose. The rebels. They stole a bioweapon and released it, thinking they could control the transformation, thinking it would create some kind of new society. And instead they created hell, Benedict said quietly. Gabriel was examining the other bodies in the room. Some of these people are restrained like the senator. The rebels must have come back after the infection took hold, chained up the ones who'd turned. Made them into what? Examples? Trophies. A message, Schmidt said. This whole room is a message. This is what happens to the old order. They were making a political statement. He looked at Senator Marcellus, still straining against her chains, her infected eyes devoid of any human consciousness. The woman who'd sent that vague distress call because rebels held her at gunpoint. The woman who'd tried to maintain order even as the world collapsed around her. Now reduced to this, a chained monster, a propaganda piece for a revolution that had consumed itself. We need to document this, Schmidt said, his voice hard. Every detail. Record it all. Drydus needs to know exactly what happened here. Benedict activated his armor's recording systems, carefully documenting the room, the bodies, the broken vials, the datapad, the senator. Gabriel found more evidence, manifestos from the Renewal Initiative, detailing their ideology of biological transformation and societal rebirth. Planning documents showing they'd infiltrated the bioweapons lab months before the outbreak. Communication logs proving they'd coordinated the uprising with the deliberate release of the pathogen. They thought the virus would transform people into something better, Gabriel said, reading from one of the manifestos. Enhanced humans, free from weakness and corruption. Instead they created monsters, Schmidt finished, and killed 400 million people in the process. Boss, Benedict said quietly. We need to go. We've been here 20 minutes already. Jake needs us back at the ship. Schmidt took one last look at Senator Marcellus. In another timeline, she might have been a hero, a leader who stood against rebel forces, who fought to protect her people. In this timeline, she was just another victim of ideological madness. I'm sorry, he said quietly, though he knew she couldn't understand. Then he raised his rifle and fired once, the round severing her spine. Her body went limp, the infected light fading from her eyes. One by one, he and Gabriel put down the other infected in the room. Mercy kills for people who'd been executed twice, once by the virus, once by being locked away as propaganda. They left the building in silence, the weight of what they'd discovered pressing down on them. The rebels hadn't just released a bioweapon. They'd done it deliberately, as part of a twisted ideology that viewed the infection as a tool of societal transformation. The jammer, Benedict said finally. We still need to take it down. Schmidt nodded, forcing himself to focus. Right. The jammer. Let's move. They approached the communications tower with renewed purpose. The infected surrounding it seemed almost mundane now, compared to the horror they'd just witnessed. The service entrance was still accessible, and they made their way to the maintenance shaft. The climb was mechanical, automatic. Schmidt's mind kept returning to that conference room, to the senator's clouded eyes, to the manifestos proclaiming biological transformation as humanity's future. They reached the 30th floor and found the jamming equipment humming with power. Benedict placed the charges with practiced efficiency. Remote detonation, he reported. We can trigger them from the ship. Good. Let's get out of here. The descent was faster than the climb. They emerged into the street level to find the horde still surrounding the building, but a gap remained on the north side. They slipped through, moving with the urgency of people who'd seen too much. They were clear, running through the streets of Larouk, putting distance between themselves and the communications tower. 2 kilometers from the building, Schmidt keyed his comm. Ellen, we're clear. Detonate the charges. Detonating now, Ellen confirmed. Through his helmet's rear-facing camera, Schmidt saw the top of the communications tower erupt in flames. The jamming equipment shattered, pieces raining down onto the street below. The invisible electromagnetic storm that had blanketed the city began to dissipate. Jamming field is collapsing, Ellen reported. I'm getting through. Transmitting now, full report to Drydus High Command. Schmidt activated his comm. Ellen, we've got additional data to transmit. Uploading now. He transferred the recordings from the rebel building, the datapad logs, the manifestos, the evidence of deliberate biological warfare. Received, Ellen confirmed. This is, oh God, they did this on purpose. They did it on purpose, Schmidt confirmed, his voice hollow. A rebel faction called the Renewal Initiative. They stole the bioweapon from Barnett's research labs and released it deliberately. They thought it would transform humanity into something better. Silence on the comm for a long moment. Then Ellen's voice, carefully controlled. Message sent and confirmed received by Drydus High Command. They're ordering the fleet to establish a full orbital blockade. No ships in or out. They're classifying Barnett as a level 5 biohazard zone and authorizing complete planetary quarantine. What about extraction for us? Gabriel asked. They said to use our best judgment. If we can escape, we're authorized to do so. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. If not, we're on our own, Benedict finished quietly. Then we better not fail, Schmidt said. Ellen, how are the repairs coming? Jake's outside now, installing the new actuators. He says another 3 hours, maybe 4. We're heading back. Keep those point defense systems active. The team moved through LaRouque's streets, retracing their path toward the spaceport. The city seemed different now, not just dead, but deliberately murdered. Every infected they saw was a victim of ideological madness, of people who'd thought they could reshape humanity through biological horror. They were a kilometer from the harvest moon when they saw it. A crowd of infected, larger than any they'd encountered before. Thousands of them, streaming toward the spaceport like a river of rotting flesh. Moving with purpose, moving toward their ship. Oh hell, Gabriel breathed. Schmidt activated his comm. Ellen, Jake, we've got a problem. Large infected force heading your way. How long until the ship is flight capable? Jake's voice came back, strained with effort. 3 hours minimum. The actuators are installed, but I need to calibrate them. Test the systems. You've got 1 hour, Schmidt interrupted. After that, we're not going to have a choice. That horde is going to overrun the landing pad. Boss, I can't. 1 hour, Jake. Make it work. Schmidt looked at his team. They were exhausted, low on ammunition, running on adrenaline and determination. And between them and their ship was an army of the infected, victims of a revolution that had consumed itself in biological madness. We need to thin that horde, Schmidt said. Benedict, how much demo do we have left? Enough for maybe 2 good explosions. 3 if I stretch it. Then we're going to need to be creative. Schmidt studied the terrain, looking for advantages. There, that overpass. If we collapse it while the horde is passing underneath, we could take out hundreds of them, Benedict finished. Maybe more. Do it. Gabriel, you're with Benedict. I'm going to circle around and draw the horde toward the overpass. Once they're in position, bring it down. You're going to use yourself as bait? Gabriel asked. That's insane. You have a better idea? Gabriel considered, then shook his head. Just don't get killed. Zara will never forgive me if I have to tell her you died being heroic. Noted. Schmidt checked his ammunition. 1 drum magazine, maybe 60 rounds left. His sidearm had 1 magazine remaining. It would have to be enough. On my signal, he said. And good luck. Ave Drydus, Benedict replied. Ave Drydus. Schmidt split off from the team, moving through the ruins at a dead run. His armor's servos whined with the effort, but he pushed them to their limits. He needed to get ahead of the horde, needed to position himself where they'd see him. He emerged onto a main boulevard 300 meters ahead of the infected mass. Through his rifle's scope, he could see them, thousands upon thousands of shambling figures, all moving toward the spaceport with single-minded determination. Victims of the Renewal Initiative's madness. People who deserve better than to be sacrifices to ideology. Time to get their attention. Schmidt raised his rifle and opened fire, the heavy reports echoing across the empty city. The rounds tore into the leading edge of the horde, infected falling with shattered limbs and severed spines. As one, the horde turned toward him. That's right, Schmidt muttered. Come and get it. He ran, leading the horde toward the overpass. Behind him, he could hear the moans intensifying, thousands of voices joining in a chorus of hunger. The infected surged after him, their shambling walk accelerating into an uncoordinated run. Schmidt poured on speed, his armor's power assist pushing him faster than any unaugmented human could manage. But the infected were tireless, driven by the pathogen's corrupted directives. They didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't feel pain or exhaustion. The overpass loomed ahead. Schmidt could see Benedict and Gabriel in position, charges set on the support pillars. Now, Schmidt shouted into his comm. The world exploded. The support pillars shattered, tons of reinforced concrete and steel collapsing onto the street below. The leading edge of the horde disappeared beneath the rubble, crushed instantly. The collapse created a domino effect, pieces of the overpass tumbling down in a cascade of destruction. When the dust cleared, a 100-meter section of the overpass was gone, replaced by a mountain of rubble. And buried beneath it were hundreds, maybe thousands of infected. But thousands more kept coming, climbing over the debris, their moans never ceasing. Schmidt kept running, his breath coming in gasps. The landing pad was ahead now, the harvest moon visible in the distance. He could see Jake on the ship's hull, working frantically on the thruster assemblies. "Jake," Schmidt called out. "How much longer?" 30 minutes. Maybe 40. You've got 10. Button it up and get inside." Schmidt reached the landing pad, his lungs burning, his legs threatening to give out. He turned, bringing his rifle up, and saw the horde cresting the rubble pile, still coming, still hunting. Gabriel and Benedict arrived moments later, their own weapons empty, running on fumes. "That's all we've got," Benedict gasped. "No more demo, no more tricks." "Then we hold here," Schmidt said. He keyed the ship-wide comm. "Ellen, activate all point defense systems. Maximum rate of fire. Burn through ammunition if you have to. Just keep that horde back." "Already on it," Ellen replied. "You might want to get inside. This is going to be loud." The Harvest Moon's autocannons opened up with a roar that shook the landing pad. 20mm rounds tore into the advancing horde, each burst reducing infected to component parts. The weapons tracked with mechanical precision, creating a kill zone that nothing could cross. But still the horde came. Schmidt, Gabriel, and Benedict added their own fire to the barrage, their rifles cracking in the afternoon air. Together with the ship's guns, they created a wall of fire that held the infected at bay. "Barely." "Jake," Schmidt shouted. "Talk to me." "Almost there. I'm running the calibration sequence now. 15 minutes. We might not have 15 minutes. The autocannons were starting to overheat, their rate of fire dropping as safety systems kicked in. The infected pressed closer, their front ranks falling to gunfire, but their rear ranks pushing forward with mindless determination. A crawling infected made it past the kill zone, dragging itself forward on its arms. Gabriel put a knife through its skull, then another as more broke through. "We're being overrun," Benedict called out. Schmidt made a decision. "Everyone inside. Now. Ellen, seal the cargo ramp the second we're aboard." The team sprinted up the ramp, infected close behind. Schmidt was last aboard, firing his sidearm one-handed as he ran. An infected lunged for him, its fingers scraping across his armor before Gabriel's plasma rifle vaporized its head. The cargo ramp slammed shut, sealing out the moans and the grasping hands. "Jake," Schmidt shouted. "We're out of time. Calibration at 90%. Give me 5 more minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes." Gabriel pointed at the external cameras. The infected were climbing onto the ship, hundreds of them, weighing down the hull with their collective mass. "They're going to ground us." The ship shuddered as the point defense systems switched targets, firing at near point-blank range into the infected clinging to the hull. Bodies fell away, but more replaced them. 95%. Jake called out. Come on, come on." The ship listed to one side as the weight of the infected threatened to topple them. Alarms screamed across every console. 98%. "Almost there." "Jake," Schmidt started. 100%. "We're good. Ellen, get us out of here." "Hang on." Ellen's hands flew across the controls. The Harvest Moon's engines roared to life, the repaired thrusters firing at full power. The ship lurched upward, infected falling away like rain. They climbed, breaking free of the landing pad, rising above LaRouque's skyline. Through the viewports, Schmidt could see the city falling away below them, a graveyard of millions, all victims of ideological madness masquerading as revolution. Adjusting attitude for orbital insertion, Ellen reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "We're clear of the atmosphere in 30 seconds. The Harvest Moon broke through the cloud layer, the sky darkening from blue to black as they left Barnett's atmosphere behind. The planet fell away below them, beautiful and terrible from this distance. "We made it," Benedict said, disbelief in his voice. "We actually made it." Schmidt slumped into a chair, his entire body aching. "Set course for New Spokane. Best possible speed." "Already done," Ellen confirmed. "ETA for days. For days to get home. For days to see their families again. For days to try and process what they'd witnessed." "Boss," Gabriel said quietly. "What are we going to tell them? Drydus, I mean. About what happened down there." Schmidt thought about Senator Marcellus, forced to send misleading transmissions before being executed by bioweapon. He thought about the Renewal Initiative and their twisted ideology. He thought about 400 million people transformed into monsters because revolutionaries believed in biological transformation as the path to a better world. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "All of it. And we make sure they understand that Barnett can never be allowed to spread beyond that orbital blockade." This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate biological warfare by people who thought they could reshape humanity. You think they'll listen? Benedict asked. They'll listen, Schmidt said, his voice hard. We have proof. Recordings, documents, manifestos. We have everything they need to understand what happened here. He paused. And we make damn sure they know that anyone who tries this again, on any world, needs to be stopped. Permanently. The Harvest Moon jumped to hyperspace, leaving Barnett and its millions of infected behind. But Schmidt knew, deep in his bones, that this wasn't over. The Renewal Initiative had proven that bioweapons could transform a world into hell in months. And somewhere out there, someone else might think they could control that power. That was a threat that would haunt him long after they reached home.
Many thanks to channel member and Pathfinder Caroline Lajoie for making this video possible. And thank you to all my other channel members and Pathfinders as well. You all keep this channel going. If you'd like to become a member, please be sure to do so and gain access to some awesome exclusive perks. Everyone else, thank you for listening to this story, and I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to see more videos like this, and be sure to leave this video a like, too. Channel memberships, super thanks, merch purchases, and even book purchases, our links to our books are in the description section below, are a great way to keep this channel going, and they help us afford to make better videos too. Partner with us as we grow into one of the best sci-fi channels on YouTube and beyond. With all of that said, thank you again for listening to this story, and I hope to see you again. Thank you for your time, and be sure to check out the story and playlist on the left side of your screen now. I'll see you in the next one.